job title is Senior Research Associate, and I work at a biotech company called Ring Therapeutics. And this is a gene therapy company that's based in Cambridge, Mass. And I've been there since February of this year, and I work on the genomics team. So basically what Ring does is we use something called adenoviruses. So everybody's heard of COVID, right? So there's a different type of virus called an adenovirus, and it is part of what's called your commensal virus. So in your body at all times you have bacteria, viruses, just kind of float around. Some of them harmful, most of them not, and adenoviruses are one of those. And basically we are trying to learn as much as we can about them so that they can be used as a tool to treat diseases, and if we get it right, we can use it not just for one disease, but kind of across the board. And what's special about adenoviruses is that they do not cause an immune response in your body. So if you're infected with the virus, which most of us probably are right now, we probably have a couple different kinds of it. It doesn't mount an immune response, and that's important because if we use it as a medicine, that means it's redosable. So you can give it multiple times and it'll still be effective. So if you are familiar with, for example, the Johnson & Johnson COVID vaccine, that was made using technology called AAV, so adeno-associated virus. And that is kind of the leading idea in gene therapy at the moment. But the problem with AAV is that it's not redosable. So AAV does cause an immune response. So, for example, if you got the Johnson & Johnson COVID vaccine, you would not be able to get the Johnson & Johnson Ebola vaccine because it uses that same technology, and the second time you give that medicine, your body's just going to have an immune response. It's going to remember the first time you had that medicine and cause an immune response. So all that to say, Ring is trying to do something different, and something that's also special about Ring is that we are a biotech company, but we also publish scientific papers, which is really important because in science and biology, the way that information is distributed and the way that you share what you found is through scientific papers. So this is an example of one. So this is a picture of what adenoviruses look like. So they are, there's a terminology I use, they're a single-stranded DNA virus. And the way that Ring got its name is because the single-stranded DNA is a circle. So the circle of DNA is inside this capsid that you see here. What I do at Ring, I mostly day-to-day am working in the lab at a bench. If you picture a stock photo of a person in a lab coat with glasses, pipetting liquids, that's mostly what I do all day. I joke that I just move clear liquids from one place to another all day long. But as Billy pointed out, you have to do it correctly, which is the hard part. Since I work on the genomics team, I do a lot of sequencing. So since we're trying to learn about this type of virus, we get samples from other places in the company, and they want to know more about the DNA or the RNA sequence that's inside. And so it takes a lot of work to kind of get from, the samples that I usually get are cells, so cell pellets. So it takes a lot of work to get from cell pellet to something that's ready to put it on the sequencer. So the sequencer is probably like this big, and it's the machine that you basically have your DNA and you load it onto the machine, and then it's going to work its magic with lasers and spit back the DNA sequence that you're looking for. And this is a skill that's completely new to me. I've only been working with sequencers and on sequencing since February. So that's also a cool thing about working in biotech is that you're not stuck doing one thing all the time. You can kind of move around. Some other parts of my job, I have to document everything I do on my online lab notebook. I'm also involved in experimental design. So when we have questions that we want to answer, we have to design an experiment in a way that the data we get will be meaningful and interpretable. So I'm involved with that design, and then I'm also responsible for communicating the results of my experiments. So once a week we call it a data dive on my team, and so basically the work that everybody's been doing, they kind of give an update on what the results are, and so that's also part of my job. Another thing that's cool is that, so biology nowadays is kind of half work at the bench and half computational biology, and so most of my experience is at the bench.
I'm sorry, I had both of you in class.
Yes, yeah, I had Phil in 2009.
I'm saying to myself, I know these.
Sorry.
That's okay. And so basically, like as I was saying, most of my work I've been doing at the bench. And at Ring, I have the opportunity to learn more of the computational side, which is really important because that's kind of where the field of biotechnology is headed. I consider myself a grandma with computers, but I'm trying to get better. So yeah, so as far as my background, like I said, I am a product of the Leominster school system. I graduated from Leominster High in 2013, and then I went on to study at Framingham State. I have a bachelor's degree in biology, so I was actually a pre-med concentration, and then I had a minor in biochemistry. So going into college, I had this grand idea that I was going to be a physical therapist. I was going to work in the medical field and kind of work with patients. Turns out I'm not a people person, so I would prefer just working in a lab kind of by myself, listening to a podcast, doing my thing. So I didn't want to spend my days like touching people. But luckily the pre-med concentration overlapped a lot with the skills that I needed for my current career. So and so also while I was in college, I learned that I really liked being at the bench doing lab work, and so I kind of went from there and made a career out of that. So here's me, April of 2020. I'll get there, but so after I graduated from Framingham State, I worked for 2.5 years at what's called a contract research organization. So this was a company located in Natick, Mass, and I kind of think of it as they're kind of like the middleman in the biotech world. I've described it as doing somebody else's bitch work that they don't want to do. Like if they have a ton of a certain assay that they need to do all the time, they kind of like outsource it to a CRO. So that's what I did for 2.5 years. And although it was a pretty monotonous job, I'm really glad that I did it because that's where I learned most of my basic lab skills. And it also set me up to switch to working at a virology lab at MIT. So for 2.5 years, I worked in Lee Gerke's lab at MIT, and the focus of his lab is to mostly study flaky viruses. So that's viruses like Zika and dengue and those kinds of things. And when you work in a biology lab, there's kind of like 4 different levels of how dangerous of a pathogen you're working with. So BSL 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that stands for biosafety level. So I've worked in 1, 2, and 3. So 1 and 2 are pretty chill. Like you can, like Zika and dengue was a BSL 2. You just have to obviously be careful with what you're working with, but there's no real risk of transmission because, for example, Zika is a mosquito-borne illness and we didn't have any mosquitoes in the lab. But BSL 3 is kind of where it gets more intense. And as you can see, I had to wear the whole getup. So underneath that blue kind of apron thing, I had full coveralls, and then 2 pairs of gloves, sleep protectors, and then this beautiful helmet thing that kind of pumps HEPA-filtered air throughout and air. And so, lucky me, I joined a virology lab 6 months before the global pandemic hit. So, viral pandemic, yes. So, when COVID happened, we very quickly pivoted from studying mostly Zika to mostly COVID. And at the beginning of the pandemic, I was one of 2 people in the city of Cambridge who were allowed to work live COVID-2 virus. So I still am processing that. I can't believe that that was a thing that happened to me. But because of the work that I did in the lab, I was an author on several papers that are now published in scientific journals. And that's something that will stay on my resume for the rest of my career. So exciting stuff. So I worked at MIT for 2.5 years, and then now I'm working at Ring Therapeutics. And so in biotech, you kind of have 2 main spheres that you can work in. There's either academia or industry. So academia is when you're working at a university like MIT, Harvard, places like that, and the lab is studying whatever it studies for the sake of science, and they're funded by grants, usually like government, like NIH grants. And because of that, it's kind of more laid back, more flexible, but we make a lot less money in academia compared to industry. So industry will be any of the biotech companies that you may have heard of, like Moderna, Pfizer, places. But the cool thing about living in Massachusetts is that the Boston area is the capital of biotech in the entire world. So if you're at all interested in biotech, you're already in the right place. And yeah, so I'm lucky enough in my career so far to have worked in academia, and now I'm in industry. Yeah, so the reasons that I like working in biotech is that my job is to answer interesting questions, and we're literally expanding human knowledge. So the papers that Ring has published are all on adenoviruses, and they're not a very well-studied virus, so we have found things out that nobody had known before, which is really cool. I won't say that you're going to save the world by working in biotech. In theory, you're working on a way to treat disease, but you're kind of far removed from it. And working in industry is a little bit like selling your soul, because you're making more money, but it's not as, I would say, altruistic as working in academia and an academic lab. And something that has worked out for me is that I don't necessarily need a graduate degree in order to kind of move up the career ladder. So I don't have a master's or a PhD, but I've been able to advocate for myself and so I graduated from Framingham State in 2017, and I've been working since then, and obviously I've had a lot of experience in those jobs that I've had, and so when I was hired at Ring, I was able to advocate for myself in a way that I was hired at a higher level than what they originally offered me, and I was able to negotiate my salary so that I was making more of what I thought I deserved, which is important, especially for women, because we tend to not ask for more money, and you just kind of leave it lying there on the table. That's kind of all I have about my career and like how I got here. This is my favorite part of the presentation. So if I were to do it all over again, so Billy and I graduated together, so we have been together since senior year of high school, and we just got married a few months ago. So this is us in 2012 after the Thanksgiving football game, and here we are at our wedding. So if I were to do it all over again, there's probably some things I would change. I feel like when I was in high school, I was so stressed all the time. So I think obviously working hard is really important, but also knowing when to give yourself a break and when to give yourself that grace is also very important. And I did take a few AP classes in high school that really helped me in my college career. So I took AP Bio, AP Physics, and AP Stats. And I will say that AP Physics was probably my most helpful class. This was back in school, we all taught it. And yeah, because of my background from AP Physics, when I had to take physics at the college level, I had a terrible professor, and I was able to get through that class because I could go back to my basic knowledge. Yeah, that's kind of all I have. If you have any questions, let me know. Yes.
How was your AP Stats class? I hear different reviews on it, like, oh, it's easy class. No, it's the hardest class. How do you think it was?
So I took it 10 years ago, so it may have changed since then. But I don't remember it being particularly like too hard, but it wasn't easy either. Yeah, I honestly don't remember much from that class, but I was glad that I took it because then when I got to college, I was exempted from taking biostatistics because I already had that college credit. Which was nice.
So, you only did 4 years of college, right, to get your
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the cool things about biotech is that you don't necessarily need, like, I'm not going to say it's not helpful to have a graduate degree, but if you're willing to put in the years to kind of climb up the ladder, it's not a requirement to have a graduate degree. It's also, I will say, it's okay to not know what you want to do. I still don't know what I want to do with my life. I kind of don't even want to work. Working is a lot, I will say. Working full time is a lot. Yeah, it's okay to not know what you want to do. Just give yourself that time to feel out what you like, what you don't like, and move forward. Thanks, guys.
Did you rather school?
No, I didn't say that.
Would you rather work than school then?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, it's nice to come home at the end of the day and not have to worry about homework or after-school activities or things like that. So,
And you're
I'm getting paid, yeah, making my own money, living on my own. It's great. Have a cat. Can't complain. All right, thanks, guys.
Here we go.
Don't be afraid to touch it.
Yeah, okay. So, my name's William Kammerer. When I went to this school, everyone called me Billy. I go by Will now. Long story. You know, his Will, you can call me either. Yeah, so Val and I were the same year at LHS. Okay, so going into who I am, so this is me in high school, a little different than right now. So I graduated from LHS in 2013. Nobody was here. I had it for physics B and C back when it was called that. And so I'm an engineer. Val's a scientist, I'm an engineer. And I have a degree in mechanical engineering, so like physical object design more from UMass Lowell, so right down the road really. I did that from 2013 to 2018. I took an extra year because I actually worked full-time while doing that as a student. And then I started going to MIT, so at Cambridge. I got my master's in aerospace engineering, which I'll explain what that actually is, in 2020. And currently I'm a PhD candidate, so I'm technically in 21st grade. I would like to leave school soon. Yeah, about as much school as you can do. I'm not advocating for this, it's just another way you can do it. So, what do I do? So aerospace engineering is like the design of things that are related to aerospace. So think of like rockets, satellites, planes, the engines of those. I specifically work on satellites. Specifically, within that, I work on these little boxes about this big that shoot lasers. These lasers are designed to communicate information to a telescope on the ground. So the payload I've worked on is called Click A. This is actually what was just launched into space. And you can see like the project I work on is called Click. It stands for CubeSat. CubeSats are just really small satellites. CubeSat laser, so lasers, you know, think of like a laser pointer. Infrared, which is a wavelength of laser you can't see with your eyes, it's close. And then crossed. So the idea of this mission is that you have one little satellite, another little satellite, shoot lasers at each other, communicate. So that's this is actually a NASA article. That's me there in our clean room. It's like a crappy prototype of what we will eventually build. This is the first part of that mission. This is the next part. This is a risk reduction part. So we fly this, make a bunch of mistakes to inform them. What I actually work on is I design the mechanical structure. So you think of like this is a whole little box. You know, you have people who are electrical engineers. They know how to deal with the circuits of the design. So they know how to like take power from the satellite and like actually distribute that. Have the computer run, have the laser turn on and off at the right point. What I work on is designing the structure to hold all of that, and making sure that when it goes to space, it still operates. So it's a crucial part. It's great if it works on the ground, but it really is designed to go to space. I also work on the thermal and structural part. So thermal is like, you know, there's no air in space, so we can't use fans to cool things down. We have to think differently about how we actually design the thermal control of these parts. Structural is like making sure it actually survives the ride of the rocket. And I do a lot of the optomechanics. So this is optical communication, which basically you're using light instead of radio waves. So think of like your phone here. This thing communicates, sends out a bunch of radio waves to cell towers. That's how you send text to your friends. Then that works really well. But if you want faster data rates, you switch from radio waves to light waves. Think of like, no, it's kind of like, it's like that, but a laser is much more directed. Think of like a laser. So all of that is controlled with optics, and I work on controlling those optics. Yeah, so that is the click payload overall that I work on. It within that, this is click A. So this is actually this part here encapsulated in right here. All of this got lots of space, and that's actually being deployed into space over there. Yeah, so it's been really cool to work on that. That's been my graduate work, is advancing the technology of this technology, advancing the development, really the technology readiness level of this technology. There's not a whole lot of these boxes that are designed to do this, so it's kind of cool to be the only student team that's actually doing this right now. Yeah, so that's more what I work on, but I more just want to give you a background of what is engineering. When I was in your seats, I had no idea, so that made it tough when I went to college to decide things. Okay, so what is engineering? You know, it's really using the, you know, you take all these science classes, that's great to know how the physical world works. Engineering is taking those principles of that understanding of the physical world and using them to inform the design of something. There's many types of engineering. I'm mechanical, although I do like electrical stuff, so it's like making circuits work. Your phone has a battery that runs at a certain voltage. There's engineers that control the design of the battery, to figure out what voltage should it run at, you know, what kind of chemistry is in there. That's all engineering. Civil, you know, they design big structures. Like, someone designed this library. I have no idea who it was, but like, you know, you need to make sure when you build this library, it doesn't fall down, because we need to make sure everyone's safe. So that's civil engineering. Chemicals engineering, they do a lot of things. I can't claim to know a lot about it, but they deal with chemicals and engineer them. Biomedical is much more looking at the interfacing of engineering systems with humans. And then software engineering is actually making sure that the computer, if the circuits are all running, operating correctly, how do we make sure that the computer is doing what we want? That's something. So if you can think of an object, it's probably been engineered. Think of this TV. Someone designed this TV. You know, someone's full-time job is to design the screen. Like someone manufactured this bezel. You know, this is what engineers do. And we create the world around us. Engineers are awesome, scientists are necessary, absolutely, but engineers are great. So I would love everyone to be an engineer. So what does it take to be an engineer? You must believe you can do it. I know this sounds cliche, but it's actually just a fundamental fact of life. You can't do anything if you don't believe you can do it. Like, that's just fundamentally true. You need to be aware of that. And you must be be able to sit with problems and work through them. You know, the reality is that like as you go through life, you should be growing your knowledge. Like there's a whole lot of things I still don't know about right now, and the only way I'm going to learn about them is if I sit down and like actually think about them. And that's what these classes are for. That's what you're here to do is to learn about this. Trying not to shy away from that is very important because if you like your life's going to happen, you're going to try to inform yourself. So what do you choose to do with the time? And like you do not have to be good at math. I was not good at math until I'm very good at math. I got a 1 on the AP Calc test and doing just fine. There's a whole lot of things that go into that. Math is like often a symptom of an environment, not a person. What else think about it? Let's talk about the power of engineering. 1903, the Wright brothers find this wooden plane with a bunch of sticks, basically. And then in 1969, we have people landing on the moon. That's the power of engineering. Taking this idea that humans can't even leave the ground to then come through. And that's all a bunch of engineers sitting down and thinking, how do we take this technology, progress it a little bit, and everyone doing that to the point where we achieve things we never thought were never possible. Same thing like this, this old car, like we showed up to LA, just grabbed this car, everyone laughed. This is the way cars used to, 100 years ago. And now, as we increment every part of the technology, the function actually looks very, the overall design of the seat, it's got 4 wheels, a steering wheel, but everything else has changed. And that's all engineers slowly progressing the technology. How does the car actually run? Is it electricity? Is it gasoline? What are the tires made out of? How the aerodynamics of that? There are whole engineers that just study how air flows over cars. That's interesting to me. That's an interesting subject. A little bit more closer to my heart. You got Galileo back in the old days looking at Jupiter, feeling, I think those are other planets. And now this actually just launched into space. It's 21 feet wide. Think of this mirror. It's 20 feet. It's as wide as all of these seats. It's this golden mirror that we launched into space to study the cosmos. This is all engineers. It's like also scientists. Scientists are informing the engineers of it. This is what we need to actually look at. But it's engineers that actually achieve this crazy telescope. And this is like a tremendous breakthrough in the ability to observe the universe. And all of you could work on that if you really want to. Like 100%. You just have to be willing to pay the price, which is often going to college. College isn't for everyone, but if you want to work on stuff like this and design it, you do have to go to college. You can operate it, you can work on it as a technician. You don't need to, but that it's good to know why anyone pursues college. It's often to enable opportunities like this. Even more closer to my heart, rockets. So these are like the original rockets, 60s. First rocket launch into space was 1957. Think that was 60, 70 years ago. Now this is what Elon Musk is trying to build in southern Texas. This rocket is 30 feet long. Think of how big it is. Like from that wall to like the end of this table, that's how wide this rocket is. And it's like 400 feet tall. That's insane. That's a building taking off, going into space. So I actually know some of the engineers working on it. That's really cool stuff. So this is the power of engineering. You really can do fantastically cool stuff. You just have to be have the vision that I can do that. I can work on that. I'm willing to put the time in to learn how to do it. Okay. What do you want to do with your life? This is a daunting question. I think often I got lucky. I didn't know. I fell in love with space when I was in college. I did not know this at all when I was in LHS. But I happened to find something that I would do. Like I love this stuff a lot. And I'm rare. Like most people don't find things like this. Just stating what is actually true. And that's fine. Like there's a whole lot you can do with your life. You just need to think about that. Just don't let time pass without you thinking about like how do I want to spend my time. Because your job is if you work a 40-hour work week, that's 35% of all of your waking time. So how do you choose what do you choose to spend your time on? It's very important. And time will keep passing regardless of how you make a plan. So you should make a plan. I know it's very daunting. I don't want to understate that if you feel fear about that, that's natural. Everyone feels that. And the best way to figure out what the next step is to talk to people like us that have gone through that and help you. So ultimately, you should build the life you want. You don't need to figure it all out in one day. Take the time and ask for advice. Here's my email. I'm sure Miss O, Mr. Field can give you if you don't write it down right now. And the work you put in now will pay rewards for your future. So I know it sucks to show up to class. I remember being in high school, but I don't care at all about this class. There's some classes though that do really matter. Like it depends on what you work on. You know, we work in science, and the science classes paid a lot of dividends. You know, especially the physics class. And just be mindful of the choices you make now. They will affect your future. College is great. College is not for everyone, but massive debt is not. So just think about that. You know, I didn't know anything about that when I was your age, and thankfully I did not get into massive debt. And really, that was just a happenstance. It's fine to take a break when you're not sure what to do. That's only natural. You know, don't feel ashamed of that. You know, it's great to take some time, figure out what is the strategic next step for me in my life. Here's a picture of our beautiful cat. Yeah, that's all the slides I have. Anyone have any questions? Yep.
So are you still going to college right now? You said that you were still in school.
Right, okay, so I didn't know this at all. It took me a while to learn this. So you're in high school, and then if you choose to go to college, you usually do a 4-year degree. That could be a variety of things. And then often, most people just stop there. For my job, it made more sense to get a master's. So I did a 4-year degree, that's your bachelor's, in mechanical engineering. And then I did a 2-year degree, which is the master's. For the 4 years the bachelor's, the 2 years the master's in aerospace. You know, if I was a smart person, I probably would have stopped there. But I had the opportunity to do a PhD, and that's what I'm working on now. So now I'm 2.5 years into that. I probably have another year and a half left, and then I'll be done with school. There's actually no more school. I finished all the school. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm currently still in school, but this level of school is very different. Like I'm almost done all my classes. The classes I choose to take now are optional. All my degree requirements are done. When you go to these more advanced graduate degrees, it's more thesis work, so research work, and that is the satellites that I work on. So yeah, once I finish that research, then I'll be done with school. It's a great question. Questions? Yep.
Is this what you originally wanted to be? I know you mentioned like you wanted to do this in college. What did you originally want to do before?
Ooh, in high school I wanted to be a watchmaker. I love watches, yeah. Like mechanical watches are beautiful mechanisms. And that's why I chose mechanical engineering. To me that was kind of, watchmaking is a very small part of the world. And the closest thing I could think to that was mechanical engineering. And in pursuing that, I found a larger field that I was more interested in that space. So I found that in undergrad and have been following that ever since. Yeah. But I originally wanted to be a watchmaker and like own my own sailboat in high school. So things are a little bit different right now. Yeah. Questions?
What's your cat's name?
Yeah. Her name's Peeper. No. She's very
Yeah,
pretty.
He literally built something that's in orbit right now, so it's really he's humble, but he literally built with his 2 hands something that was launched into space.
It's pretty cool. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. I feel very lucky. So, and I should have mentioned this earlier. So, the main reason I do that is because, okay, for the most part, you have to pay out of pocket to go to college, you know, and how much, like, the cost of school can vary wildly. That's a personal choice to what you want to work on. But graduate school is a very different sponsored by a company, you can get a fellowship that'll pay for it. I'm lucky that the school I go to, we actually get paid to go to school. So I don't get paid as much as a full-time engineer, I would love that, but I get paid enough so that I can own our own, not own, but rent our own apartment. I can sustainably live off that while getting a degree. So, it's a lot of fun to do this work, but, if I was paying out of pocket, I don't think I would spend 5 years doing more school. That's kind of crazy. But,
Yeah, they cover tuition and then they give you a stipend.
yeah, so if you're looking for far in the future when you're looking at graduate school, I think that is an option for a lot of people. It's more navigating the field of what opportunities are there.
So they give you your first 4 years too?
No, so my first 4 years I went to UMass Lowell and I didn't pay for that. So I am a little bit in debt because of that. But UMass Lowell is a relatively affordable school relative to other called Boston schools. So I paid out of pocket for those, and then after I since not, so it feels very much. Anyone here want to be an engineer? Yeah, great. Yeah, this is great. I had very little idea when I was in high school, so if you have the inkling, pursue that. It's a great life. It's very fun. I love it. Yeah. This afternoon I'm gonna go align telescopes, lasers. That's super great.